This is not the video I planned for this week, but I felt that this parable was more appropriate given the events of the past couple of days. Caramelized Onions Part 2 is still to come, but first, let's talk a little bit about leftover fried rice. About a week ago, I was closing up the house and putting some things away for the night. I opened the refrigerator and I noticed that there was a container of leftover pork shoulder from dinner a couple nights before. I also noticed there was a little bit of cold leftover white rice and some veggies in the drawer, and I knew exactly what I would be making for lunch the next day. One of the things I love about leftover fried rice is the way that I get to use all of those seemingly incongruous bits and pieces from a variety of meals and combine them into a whole new dish. I love the feeling of using these leftovers, of dumping the containers of yesterday's proteins and vegetables into a soup or a stew or a hash, and in this case, a fried rice. I love it because the new dish is often greater than the sum of the leftover ingredients. As I laid in bed thinking about the fried rice and the way that those various and diverse parts are going to be combined into a new whole, my thoughts turned to the words in Revelation. There before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb. I love this description of this heavenly ideal. I think it beautifully bookends the narrative of the Bible, that the God who calls people to love their enemies, to provide for the naked, the hungry, the poor, the needy, the least of these brothers and sisters, as Jesus says, this God chooses to be surrounded by a wonderfully diverse multitude. I'm recording this 3 days after the heinous shootings in Atlanta that took the lives of 8 people and wounded another. I am so saddened by the senseless killing. I mourn the loss suffered by the family and friends of the victims. But I also feel anger and frustration, hurt and fear. I'm not going to rehash all the things I've been reading. I'm not going to quote the awful things that are being said. But can I just say I am so tired of listening to so-called Christians drag Jesus' name through the mud in the interest of protecting empire and building brand, of holding up power and privilege. Originally, this parable was about the beautiful diversity from that passage in Revelation, but I feel compelled to take it further. When Jesus says that whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven, it means our words and our actions have implications. Jesus says a tree is known by its fruit, that what we believe in our hearts bears out in our actions and in our words. And so to that end, I want to say that I believe the kingdom of God, His church, and ultimately heaven are places where all are invited and all are welcome. I believe this is God's vision as revealed through Jesus and in the Bible. I believe the level ground before the throne and before the Lamb has a space indeed for every nation, every tribe, every people, and every language. I believe the teachings of Jesus and the narrative arc of the Bible is inclusive of the oppressed and the downtrodden, the abused and the outcast. I believe it is fully inclusive of every sexual orientation and gender identity. I reject the notion that heaven has space for racism and sexism, classism, nationalism. There is no room for misogyny or patriarchy, homophobia or transphobia. There is no space to hate some when we are called to love all. I believe heaven fights for liberation and freedom and stands against oppression. And I know that these are tough topics. And I know not everyone is going to agree with me, and that's really okay. Because I could be wrong on some things, and I've accepted that. I've spent the better part of the last 25 years in serious pursuit of a better understanding of the Bible, a better knowledge of the world in which it was written, and a fuller relationship with my God. It doesn't make me right. It just means that I'm trying. I take seriously Jesus' words in Matthew. I tell you, on the day of judgment, you will have to give an account for every careless word you utter. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. I understand that if I am wrong, I will stand in judgment before God and give account. But let me end with this. I would much rather ask for forgiveness for being too inclusive and overly welcoming. As Hal used to say, if I am wrong, I want to be wrong with my arms wide open.